Jake Bates in to try to win this game. There it is. Fox the hold. Kick away. It is up and it is good.
Welcome to the Twentyman in the Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft. It is week 15 in the NFL season, and I have a very special guest for you guys this week. Matt Ryan, former league MVP, current analyst for CBS Sports. Matt, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. Happy to be on with you.
So week 15, monster matchup between Detroit and Buffalo. Just how much are you looking forward to, just as a football fan, of this matchup Sunday between two MVP candidates and Jared Goff and Josh Allen? How much are you looking forward to that matchup?
No, I'm fired up. I mean, there's nothing better than when you see teams this time of the year that are playing really good football go head-to-head. And quite honestly, we've got a chance to see this as a preview of what could happen in February. And so I'm looking forward to it. The energy of the Lions fan base. I've only been to a game as a player, right? And so maybe it wasn't the same Lions football team that we're seeing now, but the energy from the fans has always been unbelievable. Great fan base, and looking forward to kind of feeling that energy. But then watching this game, I think you're talking about two teams that are explosive on the offensive side of the ball, opportunistic on the defensive side of the ball. I'm looking forward to watching it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Your crew will be in Detroit in the pregame show for this matchup. You get to see it in person. Matt, how much would you have loved to play for Ben Johnson and this offense with all the weapons that Jared has at his disposal? Yeah,
I would have loved it, right? You've got pieces, on the outside, explosive pieces. And they've got multiple different guys, right? And I think that's always, your best situation as a quarterback when you have, 3 or 4 different targets that you trust that all kind of have different skill sets. But then you talk about the running back combination and Sonic and Knuckles and what they can do and their ability to be explosive, not only in the run game, but checking the football down or screening it to them, which they do an excellent job of. Oh, yeah, and by the way, we might have the best offensive line in football. And on top of that, you've got a creative, play caller that is not scared to take shots, is not scared to call gadgets. But at their core, they're a run-the-football play-action team. And for me, as a quarterback, that was kind of my strength, right, was in that play-action pass game. And I love what they're doing with Jarrett. I think he's done an excellent job.
When you watch Jared, what impresses you the most about just the way he's played and the consistency that he has shown really all year long?
Well, I think that's just it. I think it's the consistency, right? You have that one outlier game where he turned the football over 5 times. But, other than that, he's taking great care of the football while being aggressive and being explosive in the pass game. And really, that's like the Shangri-La of playing quarterback, right? You don't want to turn the football over, but you want to create these explosive plays and take advantage of opportunities down the field. And I think he's done a great job with it. But to me, it comes down to decision-making, right? Like if you're going to balance those two, right, of not turning the football over and still creating these chunk plays, you have to be an excellent decision-maker. And I think he has been that. I think he's talked about it too, right, of in the last 2 years, not feeling like he has to do too much, right? Just letting the game come to him and making the plays when they're there. And I think he's done that about as well as anybody in the league this year.
And you see Josh Allen, that's kind of been the MO with him this year too. You look at the interceptions last year, I think it was 18. He's had double-digit interceptions in each of the last 4 years, but only 5. Is it kind of the same thing when you watch them too? He's playing within the offense. He knows he's got weapons around him, and he's kind of letting the game come to him more than he has in years past. Is that why we're talking about him as an MVP candidate as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think, good quarterback play starts with that, right? It's making good decisions. I think Josh, they're a little bit different, at least from my perspective, offensively with what they do, right? And there's a little bit of play action in there, but it's not like their passing game is not predicated on kind of hard sell play action like the Lions is. But I agree with you. I think he's making great decisions. He probably runs with the football more than Jared. I mean, he definitely runs with the football more than Jared does. And I think that's a big part of what he brings to the offense as well. I think their passing numbers the yardage and those kind of things doesn't jump off the charts, but it's the efficiency with which they're playing, and then his ability to extend plays and use his legs that I think has him right, at the top of the MVP, discussion.
Look, you played with some good offensive lines, especially when you made that run in 16 to the Super Bowl. But you mentioned a little bit earlier, but when you have an offensive line that's as versatile as Detroit's, that's as talented, I mean, we're talking about the best tackle, the best center, one of the best guards. I mean, across the board, they're really good. What does that allow Ben, Jared, this offense to do when you've got an offensive line that's not only really skilled, but also versatile, Matt?
Yeah, I think the versatility is probably and the athleticism of their offensive line is probably the thing that jumps off the tape when you watch them, and I think it allows Ben to be multiple in how they attack you, right? Whether it's the screen game, there's some unbelievable clips of Penei Sewell getting out in front, right, 25 yards down the field, picking off DBs, and the athleticism to be able to do that in space allows them. I think they're a very good screen team. In the run game, they're multiple, right? So they're really good in the zone scheme. They're good with the pin and pulls. They're good in the gap scheme. And I think it allows, Ben to kind of take a look at his call sheet and feel comfortable calling anything, right? It's not like, man, this is all we can do. We're going to have to feature this. We're going to have to find different ways to do it. I think he's comfortable, whether it's pulling those guys up front, whether it's getting into the zone schemes and allowing them to run and capture. He does an excellent job of keeping things multiple and really not allowing a defense to feel like they're dialed into what you're doing. And ultimately, I think that's his greatest strength.
Quarterbacks love those kind of security blanket players, right? That really reliable slot receiver, that tight end that can make plays over the middle. Just when you have a slot receiver like Amon-Ra St. Brown and you have a tight end like Sam LaPorta, just how much comfort does that give a quarterback that, look, when things break down or when you need a big play on third down, that middle of the field, those guys always find a way to get open and make a play. What kind of a security blanket is that for a quarterback?
Well, I think it's huge, particularly in the areas that you mentioned, third down and the red area. To me, that's where matchups become probably the most important, right? It's one-on-one. Whether it's in zone coverage in a space, trying to beat that one-on-one defender, or it's in man-to-man coverage. And I think both those guys, like you mentioned, are kind of nightmare matchup. They're matchup nightmares for defenders because, typically your nickel corner or your backers or your safeties are your worst guys in coverage, right? Your corners are going to be your best. And then as you work your way inside or deep kind of in the secondary, the ability to cover in small space and in one-on-ones, it's just not as good, right? And so I've always felt like, third down and red zone was the area where if you had a great slot and you had a tight end that could play. I was lucky. I played with Tony Gonzalez. I played with guys like Harry Douglas and Mohamed Sanu, who were really good slot wide receivers. They ate in those kind of situations, right? Their production came from those kind of situations. And I think that's huge as a quarterback to be able to have that. And then also to have guys on the outside too. It's one thing if you got these guys on the inside and they account for it, but if you get one-on-ones on the outside too, you talk about Jameson going over the top or some of the stop routes and stuff he can do on the outside. It makes it really difficult and it frees you up as a quarterback.
When you look at this matchup, what do you think is the key for both sides on Sunday to come away with a win?
Well, I think it's boring, but it's about winning up front, and as much as the league has changed, that part of it really hasn't, right? And I look at both of these teams as kind of having that down, right? Of understanding that this game is going to be won and lost, in the trenches. And so I think both of them, do a really good job. But if you're looking at it from Detroit's standpoint, which I know all the fans here are, I really think it comes down to the defensive side of the ball. And it's been hard, right? It's been tough sledding on that side of the ball with injuries the entire year, right? And everybody has this next man up mentality, and nobody has done it better than Detroit. But it becomes difficult. It really does. When you keep having injuries and you keep going deeper and deeper into the roster, it becomes difficult. And I'm looking for them. I think, if Detroit's going to be successful, I really feel like defense has to step up. I expect the offense to play well, right? They're going to steal some of the stuff that LA did well last week against the Bills and go use it in their own way and be aggressive. But I think the defense, if I'm looking at it, I'm looking at those guys having to step up. And I think Aaron Glenn, I mean, I can't say enough about the job that he's done on the defensive side of the ball, given all of the issues that they've had, the injuries that they've had. The ability to turn it on every week and keep them in ball games has been awesome.
Yeah, and to your point, Levi Onwuzurike, Josh Paschal, DJ Reader, they hope they get all those guys back this week, so that'll be huge against Josh Allen, trying to keep him in the pocket and win that battle up front like you talked about. Look, you've played in Detroit before. You mentioned as a player, looking forward to seeing it as a fan, as an analyst. When you watch Detroit, when you've watched some of their home games, has that environment, has that atmosphere, has that noise shown through the screen? And how much are you looking forward to getting into that building? Matt, it's really become one of the toughest places to play in this league because of what these fans have become, because of what this team has become. And they've just been dying for it for so long. And they're showing out and showing up, and they're loud. And how much are you looking forward to just the environment? And have you noticed it on TV?
I mean, it jumps off the screen. There's no doubt about it, right? When you're watching games and you see the passion and the energy and the just the noise, right, coming from the stands, you feel that as a fan watching it on TV, and it's awesome. I think for the city of Detroit, for the fan base there, you guys have incredibly loyal fans, guys. And men and women that have been loyal to this organization for a long time and are starving for some of what they're seeing right now. And I think they're enjoying that, and they should, because this is one of the best football teams in the NFL right now. I think, talent wise, they're as good as anybody. I think they're as well coached a football team as there is in the league. And you mentioned it, right? The fans are doing their part too, right? Making it this really difficult. And it's always been a tough place. I mean, honestly, we played there a lot, and it's always been a tough place to come play. But I feel like it's gone to another level, and the noise inside that dome is pretty impressive. So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
How much would you have loved to play for Dan Campbell? And just some of the aggressiveness. You see the interaction between him and Jared, deciding to go for it on fourth down there. Jared talks about it all the time, just his love for playing with him. Look, you had some terrific coaches in your career too, some great guys. But how much would you have loved to play for Dan Campbell?
I think anybody would love to, and I certainly would. His aggressive mindset, right? His trust in his players. I think as a player, that's the thing that jumps out to me, right? The belief that he has in his guys, the love that he has for them, but also, the ability to hold them to account, right? Is so important too. And I think he navigates that entire space really, really well. And oddly enough, I believe this is true. I played against Dan in my first game in the NFL. He was a tight end with the Lions. So my first game was against the Lions back in 2008. And so pretty cool to come full circle, see him doing his thing as a guy that I played against.
All right, last one for you, Matt. You obviously know what it takes to get to a Super Bowl. You've been there. You've played in one. Does this Detroit Lions team, in your opinion, just watching them all year long, do they have the pieces to make a run and be playing in that final game?
I absolutely believe they do. I look around, I think Jarrett and his experience prior to coming to Detroit, right, and having done that and knowing what it takes, right, and being comfortable in those type of games is huge. And then I think their run last year, right, and the disappointment, I think that is huge. In my case, we went to the NFC Championship game in 2012 and lost, right? Disappointing, much like Detroit last year. It was against San Francisco. And I know the hunger and the fire that builds. And remember having teammates that were both on those 2012 teams and then the team that we were on in 16, remembering those type of experiences. So I think, given the way the roster's built, given their experience running, deep into the playoffs last year, I absolutely believe this team's primed to make a run.
Well, it's week 15. The best matchup in the NFL will be in Detroit. Buffalo Bills versus Detroit Lions. Matt Ryan will be there. Him and his crew will be breaking it all down in Detroit on CBS beforehand, and he gets to enjoy one as a fan in Ford Field. It should be a good one, Matt. Thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time.
You got it. Can't wait to get there on Sunday.
Welcome back to the Twentyman Huddle podcast, and on this show, I always like to feature guys who maybe don't get a ton of the spot, but especially like I've had Jack Fox on, I've had Khalil Dorsey on before. Some of these guys that make such an impact on teams. And how much do you love this place, this atmosphere, this head coach that puts such a value in what all you guys do on teams?
You know, I love it. I mean, it's like there's certain teams that take special teams for granted, and then there's this team that doesn't take anything for granted. It's like any play that you put on there, you don't want to put on bad film. How we play, you know, how versatile people are in terms of like switching around in the different positions and special teams, and then on defense and everything like that. It's just amazing.
How much tougher is that? But I'm glad you mentioned the defense because you've played a critical role there too. But always being ready and having that kind of double duty mindset, because you're one snap away from being the starting quarter on this team too. Yeah. But then you've got all this responsibility on special teams. How much is on your plate week to week? How much are you pulling defensive meetings to special teams to all this kind of stuff? And do you love that? Do you relish it?
Yeah. No, I love it. I love the pressure. It makes me who I am today. I was at a point where, you know, there was no pressure put on me. Now it's like, you know, all the pressure is put on you. But realistically, it's like I just got to do what I'm told, what I'm supposed to do. It's a lot of film study, special teams, defense, everything. But I make it manageable.
One thing you're doing at an extremely high level, and Dan's talked about this, you are one of the best gunners in the league.
I appreciate that.
I mean,
thank you.
You are. How much do you love playing with Jack, and how much does Jack make you a better gunner?
I love playing with Jack. He gives me plenty of time, you know, to get down the field with his hang time and then their operation time. So, I mean, I don't know. I love it. I was like, if I were to go somewhere else, I would want him to be exactly like him, versatile in terms of, you know, he can kick it left, kick it right, kick it down the middle. He can boom it. You know, we've seen him boom it multiple times. And, he makes my job a lot easier.
Also, kick return had a big one early in the year. How much did you want that one?
Oh, my goodness.
You were the last guy.
You know what's crazy? What's crazy is that I was talking to, I think it was Jameer after, because I think that week he went like 21, I want to say, or he was like high up in the 20s. It's like, I'm slow.
So, what was that time for you?
I think it was like a 20 point something.
Okay, JMO was 20.4, I think is the highest one last week. So, okay.
This past week, yeah.
Okay. So what is the 40 time for you?
For me, I mean, I only had hand time. It was 4:31, but
who's the fastest guy? Like if it was JMO, you, Jameer,
who's racing? You talking about like who's racing for it?
Like
it would be like us.
Top three fastest on the team.
Nah, we have to go 4 because we would have to throw Leaf in there too.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So it's all 4 of us.
You 4 are definitely.
Yeah, I think our 4x1 would go crazy.
I think LA had a few kickoff returns last week. I look at Buffalo. They're in the top half of the league in terms of allowing guys to return. When you see an opponent like that, how excited are you that you might get some opportunities?
Yeah.
This week?
I'm definitely excited. The scheme that's going in and everything. You know, got a little something for him, so yeah.
Okay, you heard it here first. Just the opponent, the magnitude of the game, national broadcast, 2 of the best teams in their respective conferences. Just how much are you guys looking forward to this game, this matchup against this team at your place in that kind of environment?
We're definitely looking forward to it. Any competition. I mean, they were saying the same thing about Green Bay last week, and you know, we're just excited for the next team. So. I mean, we're not focused on anything after. We're focused on this week right now. So, yeah.
It's the right mindset to have. Go get 12 in a row. One of the best gunners, one of the best return men, one of the best special teamers in the league. Khalil Dorsey, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Twentyman Huddle podcast, and I am very happy to welcome in Chris Brown, the play-by-play man for the Buffalo Bills. Nobody knows Buffalo football better than Chris. Chris, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Sure, good to be with you.
All right, I usually start this way with all my guests from opposing cities. Here is injury wise, it's looking like Detroit is going to get a bunch of guys back this week. They've been kind of decimated by injury over the last couple of weeks. How is Buffalo now midweek handling the injury situation? What's it looking like for Sunday on their front?
Looking better on the offensive side of the ball right now because guys that they've missed for the last month, Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman, are both practicing fully again finally. They've missed those two players. The last time those two guys played was in week 8 at Seattle. So it's been a minute. And Coleman had his best game as a pro. He had 125 yards and a touchdown and was making yards after the catch. He's one of the league leaders in that area, as a matter of fact. And then all of a sudden he's got a wrist injury and he's gone for 4 games. Kincaid suffered a knee injury the next week, and we haven't seen hide nor hair of him either. So getting those two guys back in the offensive lineup will be great, especially considering they scored 42 points without those two last week.
Yeah, just what Josh Allen needs is more weapons, right? After that performance last week, just talk about that a little bit, Chris. I mean, have you ever seen anything like that? I mean, I know you're getting pretty accustomed to terrific performances from an MVP candidate like him, but to throw for that many yards and 3 touchdowns and then rush for 3 touchdowns, and unfortunately you lose the game, but just how good is he playing right now?
Yeah, I mean, all the talk all season long has been how he has played more within the structure of the offense, which has been a more balanced attack this year with the exploits of James Cook, which go largely unnoticed because Josh is such a huge figure in the league that he kind of blocks out the sun with everything else that goes on here in Buffalo. And James Cook very quietly had almost 1,600 all-purpose yards last year, and nobody knew about it because of what Josh does every week. And this year, he's almost as productive. I mean, he's got 11 rushing touchdowns. I think he's got 13 total on the season. And you don't hear anything about it because of what Josh does, especially last week, which I think only Otto Graham did in a 1954 championship game, going for a hat trick with rushing touchdowns and passing touchdowns in the same game. The biggest shame of it is they lost the dang game. But Josh, for the most part, is not putting the cape on as much as he has in previous years. And I think it's because Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, has done an excellent job of convincing him that all he needs to be is a point guard and a facilitator. And if there are 3 or 4 plays where you have to do something amazing in a game, great. In previous years, it was more like 10 or 12. And I think they like the fact that he's asked to do less in this year's version of the offense because it's less wear and tear on him.
Yeah, and it's less turnovers too, and that's something that Dan Campbell talked about this week. He talked about, when asked about Allen, is how patient he is, and noticing that. I mean, you look at the past 4 years, double-digit interceptions. I think he's only got 5. Correct me if I'm wrong. This season, but that's something that people outside of Buffalo have taken notice too. And when you can play that well and limit those turnovers, that's been huge for this football team, hasn't it?
Yeah, and once again, it comes back to playing within the structure of the offense, which Brady should get credit for. He's probably the first coordinator that's convinced Josh to do more of that. I think there's also been a concerted effort on Josh's part, going into the offseason and coming into this season, was to reduce the turnovers. I think just in reviewing all the film from last year, he realized how costly those were. But I think one of his biggest sticking points in his development has been leaving the pocket too early when in many cases it wasn't necessary. And I think he's done a better job of that too. More patience in the pocket, to Dan Campbell's point. And yes, he will still make plays off script, but not nearly as much as he has in the past, because I think he's hanging in there that extra half second and letting the progressions of the play unfold to give him options to throw the football.
And now he's got 2 more options, as we talked about earlier. That'll be important this week. How worrisome was the 42 points and you still lose a football game? Look, that happens. Their 3rd loss. But is there any lingering worry about the defense, especially heading indoors on a fast track this week against a Detroit Lions team that's number 1 in the NFL in scoring?
Yeah, I think they're going to chalk it up to bad day at the office. I think Sean McDermott was pretty honest in his assessment, basically saying they didn't come with the sense of urgency that you needed to against a team that's quite literally fighting for their playoff lives in the Rams. They didn't match that intensity. They didn't match that urgency. And this league is too close, even from the best team to the worst team in the league, to play like that and expect to win a football game. So that's on them, and they don't make any bones about it. They know they just flat out were not good enough. I think they have to do a better job of getting back on task in marrying the rush with their coverage, because it was a complete disconnect last week, and a lot of the guys on the back end got hung out to dry. Now, all that being said, Nakua and Kupp in that game, between the two of them, made 6 unbelievable plays in tight coverage. And that's where you just kind of tip your hat and be like, that's good on good, and you were better on that play. And those two guys did that a half dozen times in that game. But there were also instances where you had guys running wide open, making plays, and you don't usually see that from a Bills defense. So I think they're going to make their necessary corrections. And I think because they were a little embarrassed last week, giving up the most points they have, I think, in a couple of seasons, that they're going to be out to reestablish pride in themselves because they got embarrassed last week, and I think they want to prove that's not us.
All right, who's one player Detroit Lions fans might not know? Obviously, interconference matchup here, two teams that aren't familiar, even though pretty close play in the preseason. But who's maybe somebody that Lions fans don't know? Who could make an impact in that game Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I would say on the offensive side of the ball, Coleman coming back to the lineup is intriguing. Not a lot has been said about him because, like I said, he's missed the last month of the season. He was just starting to take control of football games in his last 2 games on the field. And then it's a shame, like, his progress got completely interrupted by the injury. What does he look like his first game back? It's going to be a good question. I think he's going to have to really knock some rust off maybe through the first couple of quarters, but that kid's an unbelievable physical talent. He's an above the rim player. He's got a 38-inch vertical and he's 6'3". I mean, the guy was Mr. Basketball in the state of Louisiana in high school and played college hoops at Michigan State, which you guys probably remember before he transferred to Florida State playing for Tom Izzo. That's not nothing. And he plays like a basketball player. He is an athletic body type like a basketball player should be. And so, I think he can outleap just about any corner out there in the league, and he's open when he's not open. So I'm very curious to see how they incorporate him back into the offense. That would be probably the first guy I would pick on the offensive side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball, it's Christian Benford. 6th-round draft choice out of Villanova. He's in his 3rd season, and he is their number 1 lockdown corner. And I think opponent passer rating against him is something ridiculous. It's like under 50. He just really... Quarterbacks don't even throw his way anymore because guys are rarely open. Last week, there were a couple of plays made against him in zone coverage, but he is phenomenal, whether it's man or zone. And I think he's still a guy that is not on a lot of people's radar in this league, but he has been top 10 corner worthy this season.
All right, Chris, in your opinion, how does Buffalo go on the road against a good team and come away with a victory at Ford Field? What's the biggest key in your opinion?
Well, I don't think you have a chance against Detroit unless you match their physicality at the line of scrimmage. So that's job 1 on both sides of the ball. And then I think the second part is going to have to be time of possession. I think they have to be better than the Lions in that area, because if you give the Lions time with the ball, that's a problem. They'll just wear you down. So I think getting off the field quick on defense and long sustained drives on offense could be a good recipe to try to pull off an upset in Detroit.
It should be a really fun game, Chris. I mean, 2 of the best in their conference. I think it's the game of the week, nationally televised. It's crunch time, right? The last month of the season, of the regular season, and everybody's jockeying for that playoff position. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere there, and a really good matchup against 2 really good teams. Chris Brown, the play-by-play man for the Buffalo Bills. Thank you for joining me so much. Appreciate it. Safe travels over here, and I'll make sure I stop by and say hello.
Yeah, good to be with you. Thanks, Tim.